Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Experience Maker live show. My name is Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker, coach, author, and podcaster, and I'm so happy to have you with me here today. If you missed the big event yesterday, I launched finally the Experience Maker, the book. It is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or wherever you buy your books. The Experience Maker, how to create remarkable experiences that your customers can't wait to share. And I'm going to throw up a website as well, the experiencemakerbook.com. If you go there and leave your order number from having bought the book, you get 3 amazing free bonuses just for stopping by. There's also some links there if you are interested in bulk copies for your employees or your clients. And happy to chat with you about that at any time. So super excited. We also had a live show yesterday, special day where I got to invite a whole bunch of my friends. I think we had 7 or 8 people up there at the same time. We kind of did a little toast to the launch, and I did a live bartending lesson, which was a lot of fun. That's going to be up on YouTube later today. So if you missed that, definitely check it out. So today, I am very excited to talk about a topic that is so important and has become even more relevant in the last 2 years, which is your health and the healthcare industry. We're going to talk with health experience expert Christophe Jauquet. He is also the author of a book called Healthusiasm. Welcome to the show, Christophe.
Thanks, Dan. Nice to be here. You got some great community thing going on here. Love it.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun, and I'll tell you, nothing like launching a book to really figure out who your friends are, because they come out in droves, and it's a great feeling. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Christophe, and how did you get to be a health experience expert?
Well, in a nutshell, I have a background mostly in pharmaceuticals. So I worked about 13 to 14 years in pharmaceuticals for a big American company. And then after that period, I shifted into mobile and health. I shifted into a more market research type of roles, where I still was working on health, but not exclusively for the healthcare sector anymore, but for other companies, companies like Heineken, AXA, even some food brands, etc. And after a while, which is about 3 years ago, I realized how important health is to all of us. I mean, if I give a keynote, one of the first questions I always ask is, who wants to be healthy and happy? And just like literally everybody just raises their hand, of course. And so I started realizing that that is something super important for each and every company. And so back in 2018, I wrote the book, came out 2019. 2020 was marked by COVID, as you mentioned, so it even became more relevant and more important. And so today I'm a keynote speaker specifically on the future of health, but more specifically even on customer experiences for patients and health consumers. And by that, I mean literally every one of us, because sooner or later, or in some areas of our lives, we are a health consumer anyhow.
So explain the difference between a patient and a health consumer.
So a patient is somebody, to me, who is, I would say, sick and is in need of some medical attention. A health consumer is somebody who consumes solutions that really helps them in being more healthy or in staying healthy. That's pretty much it. But actually, to be frank and honest with you, it's a distinction that I still make because many companies are still thinking in that way. Well, actually, in my opinion, I mean, we're all the same human, right? So sometimes we find ourselves in a situation as a patient. Sometimes we find ourselves in a situation as a consumer. Sometimes you find ourselves in a situation as a guest, a driver, a visitor. And so it all depends on what situation you're in. The core principle I always take into account is that whatever situation you're in, health is important for you.
Absolutely. And yes, whether it's your health, whether you're helping somebody with their own health, for sure. So tell me a little bit more about, you mentioned companies like Heineken and food companies. Tell me, how are they thinking about health?
Well, first of all, it's a very simple thing to realize that sometimes your product that you are presenting or putting forward is not really actually that healthy. And as people are more focused on health, they might want to change that. Another thing you also see is that sometimes you find yourself being in an industry that can actually offer a lot of services or experiences related to health. And that might be an opportunity again. Thinking about the housing industry or at work. I mean, there's a lot of corporate well-being going on because we're spent that much time at work. Now, what I do believe, and I think that is probably interesting for you as well and for your listeners, is that if you want to differentiate today as an experience maker or as a company that brings out an experience to their consumers, to their clients, sometimes it becomes really hard to do that, right? Because I mean, everybody's kind of like at the same level of convenience. Everybody's having the same type of digital channels. So really to stand out and be remarkable and in making those experiences, it becomes a little bit more difficult. I'm sure your book will certainly tell a lot about that. But I do believe is that if you really want to differentiate yourself, and this is how I work with clients, is that you can go even one step further than just to provide a experience, and that's going into an experience that actually makes people feel better or makes people feel healthier or happier, which then is called perhaps customer transformations. Not just customer experience, but customer transformation. It's an experience that transforms a person. It's not something, I mean, and you know this probably better than I do, but it's not something that I invented. Of course, it's from a book from Joseph Pine, who actually already wrote about customer experience 20 years ago, and who then briefly mentioned that the next step after customer experience will be customer transformations. And so what I find is that if you want to get into that customer transformations, you can actually, do that by focusing on health. Because health is one of the transformation that people want to get to. People want to feel better. People want to be healthier. It's an ambition of all of us, as we mentioned earlier. And so that's kind of like how I approach things and how I believe that each and every company could actually make a difference.
You mentioned the transformation, and I couldn't help but think about my time working at Humana, which is a healthcare company. And Humana had an internal event every summer called the 100-Day Dash. And the idea behind it is that we all got into teams. I think you could get up to teams of 10 people. There was an app that would track all of the steps that people would take. And the goal was to walk 10,000 steps a day for 100 days, which is 1 million steps. Of course, you could walk more than that, and sometimes you don't hit the 10,000 steps. But what would happen is the teams would compete against each other for various prizes. And what I loved about it was that people got into it so much that they actually transformed how they went about their day. So, for example, people started taking the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Every time I had a one-on-one meeting with one of my employees, we'd go for a walk instead of sitting at the desk. And what was fascinating is even after the 100-Day Dash was over, people continued on with those good habits. And that to me is the transformation, right? Is that exactly. We actually taught people how to behave differently. And then they were able to do that long term. So I thought that was a really cool example. Other types of activities or things that you've seen work really well at companies?
Yeah, and maybe just to piggyback on what you just said, I mean, we've seen it happening in companies. We now see it happening with companies doing it for their clients. So basically almost the exact same thing. I think it was the company Wiesmann, which is, if I'm correct, it's a company that builds, heating machines. So not exactly the climate friendly company, I would say. And so what they did is they actually planted trees every time an employee or a client run a certain number of kilometers. So they actually rewarded, the planet, if you will, if their clients were running. So it's basically the same thing as you said earlier, but then exactly forced and pushed by their clients to actually make a difference. So yeah. Those are really good examples. But I see this. I mean, I think one of the very early industries that went into those transformations to me, and who today is still very much a strongholder, certainly this year, is the travel industry. I think already the travel industry was, one that went from a pure product, being like I wanted to rent a house and just go relax there, into a service, because the all-in formula that we've probably both done in the 80s was actually, the value creation that they made in that industry. Already in the 60s, they did it. So it went from product to service. And then they went in the 90s, they went to experiences. because everybody just wanted to go in Europe at least, to Iceland, to horseback ride someplace. Because they really wanted to have a different kind of experience. They don't want to just relax next to a pool and have the free meals all day long. They really wanted to experience something. And what we've seen in the past 10, 15 years in the travel industry is really that shift, not only to just a experience, but to an experience that transforms people. Climbing the Kilimanjaro, helping people out in some foreign country who's in need of help, cleaning the beaches in Thailand. Those kind of things are more like the experiences that makes you feel humble, makes you feel richer as a person, makes you feel better as a person. And so to me, I think if you're talking about industries that really did this very well already, it's definitely the travel industry. He was very early in taking that experience to the next level.
And, it's so smart because that is an industry where so much is commoditized. I mean, if you close your eyes, it's hard to tell what airline you're on, right? If you're in a plane, because some airlines are better than others, but at some point, it's just a seat in a flying metal box, right? And so at the end of the day, so much of travel has become commoditized that there's almost no choice but to start creating experiences so that there's something that stands out. And, I think this is a lesson for so many industries. Whether you think your industry has become commoditized or not, it's on the way there, because
Exactly.
Competing on product has become almost impossible. I always bring up, one of the most innovative companies of our generation is Uber, and everybody will agree to that. They completely transformed an industry. But today, if you're sitting in a car, again, eyes closed, maybe even eyes open, it's almost impossible to tell whether you're sitting in an Uber or a Lyft. And in fact, you're probably sitting in both, because that driver probably works for both companies. So there's very little, if any, differentiation between Uber and Lyft right now. And yet that happened to one of the most innovative companies we know. And so I think the warning signal is there, which is that can happen in almost any industry, which is why focusing on experience is really the way to differentiate. And I love that what I think I'm hearing you saying is that any industry can also focus on health experience, or can focus on their customers or clients being healthy. It's sort of this universal need, and it's also a way to, I guess, do good at the same time. Am I hearing you right in saying that?
Yeah. I mean, you're spot on. And I think sometimes, companies, brand managers, they struggle a bit with that idea, because most of the time what I get as an answer is that we are not a medical company. This is not what we do. The thing is that we need to realize that people are not only occupied with their health when they're in the hospital, when they're in a medical setting. In my book Healthusiasm, there's a model that I always use with customers that has actually 4 layers, and those are the 4 layers, or the 4 types of decisions that somebody is taking related to their decision. The first thing is, of course, the medical decisions, which means that people are in a situation, they're ill and they need medical assistance, and they're involved in the decisions that are taken by physicians. But then we go one step lower, then we get into the more health related decisions, or the pure health decisions that are preventative. So you stop smoking because you know that it is bad for your health. A third type of decision is a well-being decision, which is more like the decisions that you take to feel better, going to a sauna. It helps your health also physically, but most of the time what you're doing is that you're actually doing this to feel better. And the fourth type of decision is the lifestyle. I mean, it has everything to do with your interests, your passions, etc. And so as a company, you can decide where you are today and where you want to go, and it doesn't always need to go into the medical field. I mean, there is still the preventative health, there's still well-being, and there's also the lifestyle decisions that people take every day, where you can be influencing or making a difference actually, and bringing forward that type of experience for sure.
Well, I also think, I mean, you mentioned this earlier. I think the idea of companies getting more involved in their employees' health makes so much sense, because in the customer experience world, the old mantra is happy employees equal happy customers. And so if we've got employees that are feeling happy and healthy, like you said, then they've got a much better chance of creating that same kind of an atmosphere for customers. Have you run into any research or seen any any connection between healthier employees and, say, the success of the business?
Not by heart. I can like quote some study. What I do see is that if people on the one hand side they work on their own health and their own happiness, they will perform better. Of course, that's to be found in many types of studies. And I think investing in corporate well-being, I think if you invest €1, you get €3 back. In dollars is probably the same. There's plenty of Harvard studies done on that. What I think is even more interesting or more important actually is that if you give your customers meaning, if you actually make them feel that they are making a difference for or your employees, let me correct that there. If you make your employees or if you give them a meaning by, for example, making sure that they are helping the customers feeling healthier and better, well, in that case, you'll see that they themselves will feel healthier as well, or happier as well, because they actually make a difference for the customer. So what we've seen certainly in bigger corporations is that processes has come in between, the everyday employee, and the purpose of a company. And what I often work with companies when we're talking about corporate well-being is like, how can we make sure that people feel better at work, employee experience, employee happiness, and very often that in my opinion then, or in my work, it goes to how can we make sure that each and every employee makes a difference for their customers, or the way that they are interacting with customers, or their own impact, or the span of impact that they can have on customers. And so in that regard, I would have to say, yes, it does help people to feel healthier, certainly happier, in my opinion.
I think that's really cool. What are you looking at now, especially as we've been sitting, amidst a pandemic for the last year and a half, 2 years? This issue has become even more to the forefront. What are some of the things that you're interested in right now, or writing about, or thinking about, or consulting about?
Well, I think what we've realized, there's plenty of things. I can go on for an hour probably with that kind of open question. I think there's a lot going on. First of all, people realize that if you're not already in good shape or in good health, you're at a greater risk for anything. This is what COVID has shown us. Another thing is that we realize that people are looking for their own information and their own health truth, if you will, and they don't always believe the medical system for that. So we really need to think about how can we educate people, and how can we change that. Another thing that we've seen is that very often people are less scared about a disease and believe that their own overall health is more important. It's a discussion that we have between, should we lock down again and feel very bad and maybe have a negative impact on our mental health, while maybe we're not even that at risk at all for the moment. So there's a lot of debate going on. There's a lot of mental shifts that I see happening that I'm following very closely, because it might make a difference for what we will be seeing in the next years. If we look really specifically at products, like interiors, I have a construction client who's very much focused now on having clean air in the house, or who are building their house in entirely different ways, so that they have a place to do some workouts, for example, or that they have a place where they can, install UV lighting so that everything can be, germ free. You can see that in the car industry market as well, where a healthy configuration is even more important than having very important sound systems, for example. So in each and every environment where we spend a little bit of time, you see that all of these features become important. And I think retail in my opinion, might be a very important one as well, because they have lost a lot of clients now to the digital markets, to the digital channels, if you will. If they want to get their customers back into the stores, they will need to offer something else than an abundance of choice, because there's always more choice online. They will need to offer that type of experience that actually makes people feel better again. So to me, the physical places that now are often considered as the retail stores, they will need to become transformative spaces. So I think what COVID has done is an awful lot. I mean, there's an awful lot going on right now, a lot of shifts going on. But I believe that the main outcome of it is that everybody will be more aware, more focused, more occupied with their own health, and that each and every company will even more radically need to listen to that if they want to connect with their own customers.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And one thing I would add in retail is, I think from an experience perspective that safety is going to continue to be a theme, and that is part of health, is feeling safe. It's part of our mental and physical health. And that could be, hey, I don't want to catch a disease in your store, but it also could be, just feeling physically safe in a store, whether it's slip and fall or, if you're in a high crime area or anything, any way that you define feeling physically safe. And I think also that translates online as well, is that we want to feel like our data is safe and that we can peruse the web without being followed or monitored and that sort of thing. And to me, this all wraps up into things that in particular retail is going to have to continue to think about as people come back to stores, as they continue to compete with the online space.
Exactly.
Christophe, go ahead.
No, I was just about to say, I think the difference between the two is that one is almost like the hygiene factor, literally. It needs to be there and people don't want to worry about it. As soon as they worry, you lose them.
Yep.
If you get that under control, then the next thing will be make sure that they actually feel better, that they don't have to worry, but that they actually feel better, potentially even healthier because the atmosphere, because of the lighting, because of the fact that they can relax in one way, or they can have a specific smoothie or what have you all. But so there's the two dynamics, but the one is the hygiene factor, the basics, and the other one is like the next level that really makes that people will come back to the source.
Yeah, well said. That's I definitely agree with you. Well, Christophe, as you mentioned, we could talk for hours about this. It's a really fun and interesting topic. If people want to connect with you and continue the conversation, how should they do that?
Well, they can go to my website, which is www.christophejauquet.com. If that is a little bit difficult to know how it's spelled or written, you can go to healthusiasm.com. So it's health and the word enthusiasm merged into one, Healthusiasm. And that's also a way to find me. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram also as Healthusiasm. And I post on a daily basis examples of, companies, brands that actually go out there and put health experiences out there to make a difference for the customers.
That's awesome. And I too am a storyteller, and that's my favorite way to learn and favorite way to teach. So
Exactly.
Definitely check out Christophe's content and connect with him after the show. Thank you, sir, for being here. I really appreciate it. Great conversation, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. It was my pleasure.
And thank you also for being here today. We're going to be back next week with another great new guest. And next week, we're actually going to try broadcasting on a Friday. So next week, we will welcome Hank Ebeling to the show on Friday, the 24th at noon Eastern. Hank is the founder and coach of H4 Training. He is a personal trainer, and he's also the author of Crushing the Competition with Service. So fun title of a book. And we'll have Hank here next Friday. So please join us. Thank you, as always, for joining me on the Experience Maker Live show. We'll see you next week. I'm Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker, coach, author, and podcaster. Have a terrific weekend, and we'll see you next week.